From a secret location in room 100 of 540 Jack Gibbs Boulevard, this is Craft. I'm your host, Doug Dangler.
I am at the 2015 Comic-Con with Nikkol Jelenic, who is an artist and writer. And tell me about the stuff that you're working on now.
I mostly do horror comics, and I have this book, A Taste for Killing, that comes out usually always around Halloween because it's a horror-based thing that kind of goes along with anything that's really horror and pop culture. And so this is the one that came out last year, and mermaids and sea creatures were pretty hot, so that's what this book was. And this year witches are pretty big, so the one coming out next month will be witches.
So you go with a different theme every year, just something you think is in the zeitgeist, that kind of stuff? All right. So when you're working on it, where do you go for inspiration for, say, mermaids and witches and things like that?
Well, I'm a huge horror fan, so there's always movies that I've seen and that are coming out that I pay attention to, but I pick up comics and I read them currently, and I get a lot of titles. So whatever's coming out in horror, I usually pay attention to that. So Witches is really hot right now. There's Sabrina came out too. That's a really cool book. So I really like Witches too. I think that's one of the coolest things in horror because it's pretty much a female-based monster typically. So, you know, I'm into that.
So what can people expect when they read A Taste for Killing this year, or for the horror story? What kind of horror is it? Is it really graphic, since it's a graphic novel? Is it something else that's different than a splatter flick?
Well, what I do with the books, a lot of times in horror, they might be too risque or overly explicit, and I do have the gore in there, but that's about it. I try to keep the nudity zero, and the swearing's pretty downplayed, so you can really get into it, and the imagination will really get you going and make you feel more horrific about the book. So the story, I try to come up with things that I haven't seen done, so I take a concept that's been done like Witches for the coming book and do my own spin on it, and take all the inspiration of things that I have seen but still try to make it my own. I also use this particular book to promote other independent people because I'm an independent creator. So I give them, after my story's done for the whole book, I let different independent artists and writers get one page to get in this and do their version of it. So then there'll be one page of a couple of short things too that go with the theme of the book. So
when you're an independent like you are, how difficult has that as a career for you, as opposed to going into commercial art or something different?
Commercial art's a little more difficult because you have to follow specific guidelines. You have to do what they want. You get a little more creative freedom with independent stuff, which is really cool. So I'm down for both because in commercial stuff, there's characters that have been around for so long that you love, and you just want to do your version of it, and you still have to kind of stick to the guidelines. But when you do your own stuff, you can do whatever you want, which is fun. So they're both cool.
What kind of character, or what specific character would be your dream character to be able to write for a couple issues or an arc or something like that, or to take over the magazine? What would be your character?
Something that I create myself, or an already based one?
Like an already based one, a commercial.
Oh man, I would love to do a Spawn book. That's one of my favorites. I would love to do Spawn. Of course, Wolverine. That's a little cliche, but I have so many Wolverine books, and that's I'm not super big into superheroes. I like more horror independent stuff. But if I had to pick one, even though he's one of the most well-known, that's one that I've been into since I was younger. And he's kind of horror-based. He's almost you could say he's Freddy Krueger with his claws. He's could be Wolfman with his face. He's a mixture of some horror elements, so it makes him a cool character, even though he's technically a superhero. So I would probably pick that. Everybody wants to do Batman. That would be cool too.
What got you into comics as I think you've been in it for a while, maybe when you were younger? What drew you into the world of comics?
It's really funny because when I was little, I didn't really like reading comics. I liked drawing them. So I would take my brother's comics, and they had superhero stuff. And while I wasn't really into the stories at all, I liked drawing their Batman stuff and just looking at it, and that's how I learned kind of how to draw. So then eventually some books came out like Spawn and stuff like that, where it was just a little more edgy. And so I kind of got into it. I was like, oh man, the stories are pretty cool. So then I started, reading them more when I was a kid, and I was like, I want to illustrate books too. That'd be really fun. So I'll try to just do the things that I like. So I make comics that I myself would read and look at.
Do you think that you have a different sensibility because you're a woman in what's, I think, a male-dominated thing, and I don't mean that to be offensive or something. I'm just it is one of, as I walk around here and I see all the white guys that look just like me with just as little hair. I think what's the difference? How difficult is it? Do you face that, or do you sense that?
I don't notice that it's difficult. Like I feel like I struggle or anything. I don't feel that. You do notice there's a lot more men, especially doing penciling, and that's what I do. I'm like a penciler, so I don't see a lot of girls doing that. But there are. It's just people feel more since it has been notably more male-based. But there's a lot of girls doing comics. People just don't pay attention to it as much, I feel like maybe that's why people get that stereotype. But there is a lot of chicks out there. Most of them do really cutesy things and stuff, so I don't see a lot of them doing the stuff that I draw, which they might just be totally grossed out by. But so, I don't know, maybe I narrowed that little, that's good, that's my niche.
Well, Nikkol, thank you very much for talking to me today. I really appreciate hearing your views on comics.
Oh, thank you very much. This was fun.
For more information from my guests, visit www.crafttheshow.com. This is Doug Dangler. Till next time, be creative.